Right.
Awesome. Well, dude, Nate, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I've ever since I decided I was going to do this, you are secretly like top of the list. I've always looked up to you as like a coach. I think that the material that you put out on social, but also just your mindset and my interactions with you, like you're a solid guy. You understand coaching on a deep level. And I think you're someone that like everyone would be better off if they got to listen or hear from you.
Holy moly, what a compliment. Thank you so much. Holy shit. Thanks. Oh, are we cussing or not cussing?
Yeah, hey, do whatever you want, man.
What's your policy? Okay.
How you feel? How do you feel right now?
I'm great. I just want to do my best to be as professional and as PG rated as possible.
Well, it's mostly like kindergarten through 6th grade that listens to it. So whatever makes you
yeah, let's do it for the kids.
Yeah. So dude, I mean, like, how did you get into coaching? I mean, for people that read the bio, obviously they're going to know a little bit about you, but you've had some incredible opportunities. You've worked alongside elite level athletes. You've been involved with the NBA, MMA. You've worked with collegiate athletes. You're over at WeHo at Monarch, which we know is like super progressive in their outlook and their intake process. So where did this all begin for you? What drew you towards this industry, this career? Like, just lay it all out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still hit by all those compliments. So holy shit, thank you. Thanks for all the compliments, man.
Of course, man.
Thank you. All right. So yeah, man, how it all started. I want to be as concise, but give enough information. So I guess it all started, it's always been driven by like my passion and love for basketball, really. I grew up, my mom put me onto the Lakers at a young age, and just loving basketball, watching Shaq, watching Kobe, and all that sort of stuff, like drew me to the sport, and I was obsessed with the sport at a young age. And I didn't really make it far as an athlete from an athlete's perspective. I just made it to like varsity basketball in high school, so nothing crazy. But ever since then, I just knew that I wanted to be involved with the sport or sports, like period. And from then on, like, I didn't even want to be in college. I didn't even know what college was really. I was a kid who was really to himself. So I didn't really know much about just life, I guess. But, luckily I got to meet the right people and people who would like push me in the right direction. And long story short, I'm really nerdy. So I came across kinesiology somehow and realized that I love sports, and I love the human body, and I want to know what is going on within the body at certain times when we go from rest to exercise and vice versa, and all that sort of stuff. So all of that really caught my attention. And also it definitely helped that I grew up as a chubby kid and realized that once I started playing sports, I wasn't so chubby anymore. So there was something to this, so that's what all like really brought me into it initially. But to get more in terms of like strength and conditioning wise, it was really when I finished my undergrad, and I went to Cal State Northridge, and they have a great kinesiology program. However, it's really geared towards like either really like personal training and group fitness, or like getting your DPT, being a physical therapist. Those are like the two main routes where you have like a lot of help and a lot of support and a lot of resources. But strength and conditioning like wasn't fantastic. So I didn't really get exposed to it much. I didn't really understand what it was. Even though I had the strength and conditioning class, I still didn't really understand the grasp and understand what was really involved in it until I met Tim G. Francesco at an NSCA conference. Who at the time was the Lakers head strength and conditioning coach, and I just like geeked out. I was like, I didn't even know this was a job. Like, how could this guy is training Kobe and all the rest of the guys? It was just like, whoa, like this is the dream. Like, who wouldn't want this job? So, I geeked out over him and met him and asked him a million questions after his presentation at the conference, and I've been in touch with him ever since. Like, he's been so gracious with his time with me, and I feel like we have a great relationship, even though we've never really worked together. He's always been great to me and open to phone calls and insights and advice whenever I feel like I need it. So he's been a fantastic person to look up to. And so it kind of just all started there when I met him and I realized that this is a thing and this is a real position. I pretty much like stalked him. Him and others, like I really did, like, and like I looked him up, like LinkedIn, where'd you go to school, what certifications do you have, what does your resume look like, what does someone in the NBA's resume look like, and how do I get there? How can I reverse engineer that resume or those resumes, and how can I make my resume look somewhat comparable to theirs? Like, right. How can I be like pretty much like a competitor or, you know, a candidate, you know, if you will. And I kind of just reverse engineered that, and I've had like this tunnel vision ever since, like I was like 21 years old when I graduated till I guess now, like even now, you know, I'm 28 now, but I've just been trying to reverse engineer those resumes, those expertise, that knowledge base, and I just want to be like those guys. You know, I want to be those guys, and just be me as well. You know, so
I think that's like that's a really valuable point, because I feel like there's two ways that people look at where they want to go, and one of them is like unattainable. Like, I wish I could be there. You know, it's so cool. Some people get to train with athletes, or some people get to do this. And then there's the really proactive kind of like, what's the way? How do I get there? What can I do? Okay, this guy's I don't know him personally, but he's got a LinkedIn. I can look at his LinkedIn. I don't know him personally, but I can see what their lifestyle's like on social media, or I can email them. They don't email me back, but I can email someone in their office. Like, you have all these avenues that you can pursue. And like you said, you just flip it upside down, turn it backwards. How can I start to emulate the things that they're doing to put myself in line, so that when that opportunity does come knocking, you're not standing there like, you know, you have your ducks in a row, or you've been working towards that thing. And that's a really important, especially for like aspiring, who definitely in this industry, right? Because at the upper echelon, it's like exponentially harder to get into good positions, especially desirable ones, like with sports teams, stuff like that. So you have to be sharp like that, and you have to be hungry, because when they're looking for someone to bring on, that stuff's going to show through. So you said it was Tim DeFrancesca?
Yeah.
And so I don't know what is his position with the Lakers?
Oh, totally. So this is back in the day. This is 2015, and I think he was I believe, if I'm correct, he was the strength coach for them, I think, from like 2010 to 2016, something along those lines, from that time frame.
So he was like the guy.
He was at the time, at the time he's the guy. So I have to back up a little bit. So he's a little bit, especially at the time, he was an anomaly because he was dual certified. So he was a DPT and a CSCS.
Wow.
Which wasn't very common. It's more common now, but even still, like, it's still a developing like role, and like being dual certified is like, you know, really great. You're really bolstering your resume and your knowledge base and all those things, you know. So at the time, I was planning on working towards going to DPT school, and so after that conference,
that's physical therapy, right?
That's physical therapy. Yeah.
Okay,
DPT,
gotcha.
Sorry, doctorate of physical therapy. Right. So I thought I had to be like him to be, you know, a qualified candidate, right? So I was like, all right, DPT school, let's do it, you know. And so, and like, this is all by chance, but long story short, I'm gonna save the story. But I ended up in Israel. It was like, I ended up just going on vacation after graduation in Israel.
Shana Tova, brother.
Shana Tova. Hey. Thanks, bro. So we ended up over there, and I ended up like applying for this internship like opportunity, and I ended up getting it. I just applied like not really thinking much of it, but I ended up getting it, which was honestly a blessing, because a 10-day vacation turned into an 8-month like stay. You know, I don't even know what to call it. I ended up moving there. So through this internship, I got to work with Maccabi Tel Aviv as a PT aide for basketball and for soccer, and then that opportunity got me involved with another opportunity with the IFL, which is like the NFL but in Israel. So I got to work with the Tel Aviv Pioneers, or they have a different name now. I think they're called the Tel Aviv Dragons now. But I got to work with that team during their season, and then that compounded into a clinical setting where I was a PT aide for a physical therapist who worked with most of the guys, in their off time. So I got like 4 internships in like 8 months.
And you're also, I mean, for people that don't know, like Israel's like the basketball scene over in Israel and in like Northeastern Africa and Europe, like it's highly competitive, right? I mean, I feel like it's common for people to be like, oh, it's not the NBA, so it's whatever. But hundreds and hundreds of really, really top level guys leave the US and go play over there, come back, and then end up in better positions than they were before, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's real deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, in the EuroLeague, like outside of Spain, I mean, like, yeah, I wish I could think of more off the top of my head, but like Spain, Israel, like they're like Israel's like top 5 for sure, like competitively all the time. So, Israel doesn't get like a lot of a credit, I guess. Like just people just don't really know about them. But yeah, absolutely.
And so, do you feel like? I mean, you can always connect the dots going backwards, but do you feel like your opportunity, which we'll talk about in a little bit, like with the Indiana Pacers, do you feel like the Israel experience was pivotal in then landing something like that, where like here you are on a vacation, like you said, all of a sudden a vacation turns into 8 months of work turns into progressively moving through these different avenues, and then now you look back on it and it's like, without that experience, I never would have then been able to get going where I was here back in the US.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, like resume wise, like that set me apart from all the other applicants, right? So like just to connect the dots a little bit. So after coming back to the States, I realized that I don't really want to be in physical therapy, just because I realized like, you just get treated a certain way when you're in sports medicine. Like people just expect you to fix them and they don't understand the process, and people are impatient. And also like from a clinical perspective, like I don't want to be sitting at a desk or in a chair, like in an office all day. Like I'm just too hyper. I can't do all that. Although I really appreciate the knowledge base that of course the DPT has. Like I still want that knowledge. I just don't want the lifestyle, I guess. The lifestyle factors weren't that enticing to me. And then lastly, and this is like what really pushed me over the edge into strength and conditioning is, and this is the example I give for most, like for this reasoning is, you're an athlete or just a client or a patient, and I'm a physical therapist. You get hurt, you show up to physical therapy with me for X amount of time, whatever it is. I help you get better and you feel great, and then boom, you're gone. I never see you again for the rest of your life. Like, like that's kind of how it goes, or like maybe you come back when you get hurt again, but like I just don't have an impact on you. So I want to be in strength and conditioning so I can be in the trenches with the guys on a daily basis, being on the front end, on the injury side, helping out as best as you can, and then helping on the backside too, in case like there is, God forbid there's an injury, but I can help you still get your way back after you get cleared by the PT, right? So essentially spending more time with the guys, I feel like you create more of an impact.
Right, so like more of a relationship and something long lasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Personally, but developmentally as well. Like you're with the guys on a daily basis, and they're growing with you. They're learning from you, and you're able to put them in the best position possible. So hopefully, like knock on wood, these guys don't get hurt.
Do you feel like, or rather, where do you think the convergence of these two industries is? Because you bring up a really interesting point. Like I feel in the past, there's been physical therapy and there's been strength and conditioning, and they're almost of opposing worlds. You have the physical therapist telling the people in recovery not to go do the things they go do with the physical or with the strength and conditioning. And then you have strength and conditioning coaches trying to implement physical therapy practices to prevent their athletes from getting injured to then end up in physical therapy. So are we headed towards more of a intermingling of these two industries, how do we get to a place where they support each other a little more? And are facilities like that being created? I mean, where is this headed in your eyes within the athletic realm, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what sector of strength and conditioning you're in. Like if you're in pro sports, you already have that, laid out for you. Ideally, hopefully the two departments are like really working together and they're more integrated.
Right.
Sometimes it's just not that way because of the culture of the situation or whatever it is. But anyways, I think more so now, more than ever, people realize that like you can't have one without the other, because they're just like, they're broken. They're like, these are silos of, let's just call them health and wellness, that are broken as individual silos. And in the private sector, it's definitely becoming more popular, especially with the way things are now with the pandemic. Like just because with the pandemic, just regular gyms get shut down, so the medical aspect really helps like fortify the business perspective and the health and wellness perspective of things. So like, it's a good transition into talking about what Monarch Athletic Club is we're essentially that. We pretty much took the high performance model of a pro sports organization and brought it to the public, brought it to the general public. So, and this is kind of how we help explain to people what it is that we do. Like kind of what we just talking about, these three different silos. Like personal training or strength and conditioning by itself is a broken system, just because there's only so much that this professional can do. As a professional there's only so much I can do. Like I can't step outside my scope. Just like you said, I can't pretend to be a doctor. If you have a question that goes outside my scope, I'm like, dude, I'm sorry. Like I can do the best I can, but I don't know. Like you need to consult a real professional. And then same goes for physical therapy. Just like I said, you get hurt, you go to physical therapy, you leave, they never see you again, right? Or they give you recommendations and they don't know that you're actually keeping up with those recommendations or not, because you're not in their face, like you're not there with them, right?
Right.
And then same thing goes for when you go to the doctor. You get your checkup, your lab results tell you X, Y, and Z. The doctor recommends that you do A, B, and C, and you go off on your merry way. And like maybe you don't do those things that are recommended. Maybe you don't, and the doctor will never know. He'll just wait until you show up to the office again,
Yep.
But that's where we at Monarch we're really great, and we're pretty much changing the way things are done, because you have all three things under one roof. So if you get your labs done by the doctor at Monarch, we have all that information to play with. We have all those medical considerations from the doctor's perspective, and he gives everyone a summary on every client that we have. So like we have two formal meetings a week where we go down the list of new members, existing members, and all everything in between, like anything that needs to be said or anything that needs to be communicated among the staff. Everyone knows everything about every client, and every client has a profile built. So like they have their medical profile built by our physician. They have their physical therapy profile built by their initial evaluation with the physical therapist. So we have contraindications, injury history, aches and pains, like things that are recommended from like a physical therapy, but also training perspective. Like most of us in the facility are FRC certified, so we're able to implement FRC methods, which are pretty much
functional range conditioning, right?
Right. For those of you, for people that don't know, functional range conditioning is a fantastic system.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, essentially, it's really just applying strength and conditioning principles to joints, and like I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but it's a fantastic system and it works and it's great. So anyway, so we have those considerations as well, and then from the training perspective, when the client signs up, we have our own training evaluation, which includes going down our movement hierarchy of like our primary movements, and we're just trying to see where you're at. So whether you're like a proficient squatter, proficient hinger, presser, puller, whatever it is, maybe you're not proficient, doesn't matter, but we try to meet you where you're at from a movement proficiency standpoint. And we take a few metrics of like an estimated VO2 max on a watt bike with the 3-minute aerobic test. And we also take like an IMTP. If for those of you that don't know, it's a mid-thigh iso pull. So we get some like total body strength metrics from that. And now we have so much information to play with. We have considerations from the doctor, we have considerations from our PT staff, and our own considerations from the training. And then we're able to really take an integrative approach to attack whatever your goals and needs are. And like, if we have all these resources and all these tools, like there's just no way you can lose, and there's no way you can fall short of what it is that you're looking for.
Just again, for people listening, like when you say doctor, you mean a doctor, you mean an actual doctor.
Yeah.
When you say physical therapist, you mean the certified actual physical therapist. Like these are real people in the profession that are skilled, certified, and recognized within their departments as being of the like utmost preparedness for these kind of things, right? It's not like you have someone who's interning somewhere, or I mean, these are like real people. Someone could go in there and they're actually seeing a physician.
Totally. Absolutely.
So this almost, I think that this stuff is really, really cool. I mean, obviously you and I could go on all day about this kind of thing, being in this industry and having a passion for what training can do to an individual, to their longevity. I mean, you can get really nerdy on the biometrics side of it and blood testing and all this kind of stuff. But what I think we're headed towards, and I cannot wait for the future of this to show itself, but is like, this is preventative care. If the average person out there that doesn't want to spend the rest of their life in a hospital, that doesn't want to be taking a bunch of over-the-counter drugs to keep their heart rate in check and their blood pressure and all this kind of stuff, and then later on in life have to reverse the effects of sitting in a desk for years, the next wave of preventative care is this exact model. It's marrying your doctor, your physical therapist, any kind of like recovery or rehabilitation, your strength and performance. And then do you guys do anything from the nutritional side as well with these people?
Yeah, absolutely. So with your evaluation, based on your lifestyle factors, which happens in your initial evaluation with the physician, he gets you get a body composition test. So you get to see what's going on there. You get like I said, your blood panel. So you get to see from an endocrine and hormonal perspective, like what's going on under the hood. And like, those numbers don't lie. You can tell the doctor what your lifestyle habits are, but if your blood work says one thing, like that's it, dude. Like, so, and then also the last thing is, like I said, lifestyle factors is like, if you go out all the time, you don't get enough sleep, you drink a lot, whatever it is, like your testosterone is going to be low, your cortisol is going to be high. All these factors are going to be the way they are because of these lifestyle and behavioral factors. So like the first thing that our doctor does is like, he doesn't really do much from a medical perspective. And this is the best way to do things is like, dude, just work on getting more sleep, drinking more water, and eating more food, just because most people typically just undereat. And obviously it's not just a general recommendation like that. It's recommendations based on your body weight and, like accurate ratios for whatever it is that work for you relatively. And once you figure out those three like lifestyle factors, which are three really big pillars of health, everything else usually just falls into place. And obviously like there are other things from a medical perspective that could be integrated, but it's more about behavioral change and lifestyle change more than anything else. Just like you said, like any other doctor would just give you like, hey, my head hurts, here's this pill, whatever it is. We're trying to destroy Western medicine. I'm trying to get rid of Western medicine as a whole. We want to disrupt the market. Like forget this pill popping and waiting for your checkup and paying $150 for 20 minutes just to see your doctor and ask like 2 questions. Like all that stuff is gone. Like you show up, you have access to the doctor whenever you need. He's sitting in the office. And like all of us are there available as well. So like it's we're just trying to disrupt the market and destroy Western medicine, just like you were talking about earlier.
How do you guys work with people on like the habit coaching side of things? So we know that that's a big part, right? Like you can kind of show the horse, you can bring a horse to water, but you have to teach it their correct habits for it to learn how to do the, drink it. What do you guys do with people on an individual level to help them kind of navigate choosing better things or increasing their daily activity, weekly activity levels?
Yeah, that's obviously like a very dependent question based on who we're talking about. But when it comes to like, I'll just give a few examples. I mean, we recommend wearables. So like I wear an Aura ring.
Yep.
I mean, this thing really changed the way I sleep and the way I go about my sleep and my my habits and my etiquette and everything. I was like, just my nighttime routine is just totally different than it was prior to when I got this ring. Just because I realized that I need to change, like my behaviors and my lifestyle needs some change based off like what it is that I need to accomplish. So wearables are huge, and what I recommend for most people, like we typically recommend the R Ring or the Whoop, which are
Yep.
two fantastic tools. From a nutritional perspective, like we recommend, and we have a lot of tools in our toolbox, but the most common tool we use is just having you just work with one of our partners in terms of like a meal prep service. So we have like, I think like 3 or 4 partners that we work with, just because like each meal prep service really has their own niche, and you know what, some work for people and some others don't. So that's from a nutritional perspective. We try to like just have them take care of that. And then from a training perspective, yeah, just show up, like, you know, whether it's coming in for a session or coming in on your own, like just get it done, whatever it is, whatever it is needs to get done.
I'm curious, like when you say that you're wearing the Oura Ring, I've had clients that have used that in the past. It seems to be like a lot of these things work well just because they drive behavior. Like you wear a Whoop,
Right.
You're going to pay attention to your Whoop. You're going to think about your strain. You're going to realize you're not sleeping enough. You're going to realize you don't
Right.
move enough. You're going to move more. You're going to try to sleep more. And then
Right.
the end result is that you start to impact the behaviors, whether it's actually Whoop doing that or the individual thinking about it. The end result is the same. And that's what, as coaches and facilities, we're after, right? So
Right.
what were some of the insights that you got when you started? Because you had mentioned that your sleep improved or changed, or you realized like you had to change some things. What was that experience like? And like, what were things that stuck out where you're kind of like, whoa, I need to rehash how I'm doing this?
Right. Totally. Well, my sleep has definitely not gotten better yet. It's been, I've had this ring for I think about a year now. It's gotten better on average, but man, getting 8 hours of sleep is hard. I think, yeah, it's just hard. But I might be just, I don't think it's just me. I think a lot of people have this issue, but like I can't stay asleep for longer than 7 hours. Like unless I'm like, I don't know, unless I really get to sleep in and I have the day. Even then, sometimes I just can't stay asleep or stay in bed for that long. I might just be a really hyper person, but it just really helps drive behavior. Like the biggest thing is like as soon as I see, based on what time I have to wake up the next day and what I have going on the next day. For example, if I see 8 p.m. like on my phone or on the clock, like I'm like, all right, time to shut it down. Whatever I'm doing, it needs to stop now or within the next, I don't know, whatever, 5-10 minutes, and I need to start getting ready for bed. So I need to start, I don't know, make sure I get my protein shake in, and make sure I brush my teeth, and make sure I get to bed, and whatever it is, whatever it is that is part of my routine. I just have to make sure I start doing those things early so I can set myself up for success from a sleep perspective.
Yeah, sleep is, I mean, if there's one thing that's impacted my life the most, I think it's making a conceited effort to get more rest. Because
Yeah.
especially when you're younger and you're training really hard all the time and you're just partying really hard all the time, whatever you're doing. I
Right.
mean, you're always working against yourself. When you start to actually get rest and understand the value of rest, that's when all the important things that happen. That's when, cognition improves, memory retention, muscle recovery, all the fun, cool chemical changes that are happening in your body. Those happen when you're asleep. And if you short those, then your ability to get stronger, your ability to lose weight, your ability to perform, your ability to remember, your ability to be present in business meetings and whatever it is, it diminishes the less sleep that you get. And I mean, sleep is pointed to continually by top experts is the number one thing that you should try to impact instantly if you want anything else to change. So you can do all the right things, nutritionally, you can, well, that's not true. You can have a pretty big impact by changing a lot of nutritional stuff. But
Totally,
from a
100%.
strength standpoint, for example, you can work super hard. And if you're not sleeping well, you're limiting your ability to perform significantly.
Yeah. And not just strength. I mean, like your general population client, most of which are their goal, like from what their goals are, is body composition. And dude, you're not going to gain this amount of muscle unless you get enough sleep, or you're not going to lose this amount of weight or fat if you don't get this much sleep. So from all encompassing strength, fat loss, hypertrophy, whatever it is, you're not getting any of those things if your sleep isn't right.
And you mentioned testosterone, but also just like other biomarkers are stagnant without proper sleep.
Right.
So just sleeping more can have an impact on cortisol production, regulation, insulin regulation, testosterone production, all these kind of things. Like for people listening, if sleep is something that you struggle with, put it at the top of your list. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that needs to be something that you're focusing on a daily basis, because it's going to impact everything else that you do. I want to ask you, because I thought this was really interesting. You said this, like you talked about this is going back a little bit in time, but to working with the Pacers, like the first time that you walked out on the court, because I think about this and I'm like, when I decided I wanted to become a trainer at the time, prior to realizing, like you did, the impact you can have on like individual people becomes very powerful. Like when you see change happen, it becomes a really special experience. And I think any coach that's been doing this for a long time, that's a really important part about what we do. And when you see it happen to people, it becomes even more powerful. But prior to that, I always thought that the upper echelon was like sports and conditioning. And I thought that for so long, until I knew a lot of people that got into that industry that were strength and conditioning coaches, or were like assistant strength and conditioning coaches, or they worked at the collegiate level, and they all left. And despite having a positive experience, that like ultimately wasn't where they wanted to spend their time, wasn't where they, for political reasons, the hierarchies of the teams and how to like advance up over time, all this kind of stuff. So what was that experience like the first time that you walk out on the court with an NBA team as a strength and conditioning coach? And then why leave that?
Right. Well, first, that experience was wild. Like I remember the first time you walk out from the hallway onto the court, like no one cares who you, like no one's looking at you. They're all looking at the players, but just for you in your head, in your mind, and what you're saying, it's like, wow, this is like super cool. I feel like I couldn't stop smiling the first time I walked out, even though like everyone else is, everyone's been there and done that. It was my first time. So I was like, whoa, this is so cool. So I was geeking out for sure. But to get to your point, I mean, I didn't leave willingly. This is like, you're on a contract and your contract's up and you're done. And then like from then, there's only 30 jobs out there there's only 30 teams out there in the NBA. So there's only so many positions that could possibly be vacant, and they just weren't. So that was like, it was just really that simple for me at the time. It's like being in any pro sports organization or any position in pro sports is like, obviously you need to be qualified. Obviously you need to have the network, but it's all about timing. Like, you can, like, depending on who you are and who you know, you can get a call tomorrow and ask like, hey, I'm on X team. Our mutual friend told me that you're great at what you do. I need an assistant, or I need someone down here in Milwaukee. Like, what do you think? And then you're like, shit, what do I do? So that's kind of how it works in like the collegiate or pro sports organizations. Is just like, it's such a small world that once you get into this, like, I'll just call it a network. Once you get into this network, like, and people surrounding, like, it's just like everything's just a phone call away. It's just about timing. That's really what like collegiate and pro sports is about. But like, but to get to what you're talking about in terms of like what the different sectors are, I think something I can provide is like insight in all three, just because I've been in all three.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like I'll break it down just a little bit. So like, for example, like where we're at right now, like, or where I'm at right now, like we're in the private sector. You either work for yourself or for a business, and you essentially, with an athlete or a client, you can do whatever you want. Like you see this person 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times a week, whatever it is, whatever the training frequency is. And there's no constraints. Like there's no like governing body over you, like constraint, like with constraints over your head. Like, so you can do whatever you want with this client, as long as like, obviously you're not hurting them. And it goes, as like, depending on like what facility you're at, you pretty much like have free reign to do whatever you want with this client from a training perspective, as long as it's, helping them if you're good at what you do. But in like, being in the private sector, you get to build more relationships, and it's just more personal, right? Personal training. So just think of like private sector is like more freedom. From a collegiate perspective, the NCAA, like you have guidelines like that you have to follow
as a coach.
As a coach, and
Gotcha.
yeah, as coaches and athletes both have guidelines that they need to like abide by. So like, for example, the NCAA has guidelines on the number of hours per day or number of hours per week an athlete can spend on athletics. So like,
wow.
For example, yeah, people don't really know this unless you're in it. So like, for example, and this goes across for all sports except like football. There's a few extra rules, but I haven't worked in football, so I don't know the rules off the top of my head. But just know, like, for the most part, the rules are pretty much the same. So anyways, in season, an athlete only has 4 hours per day or 20 hours per week to spend on athletics, right? And then out of season, an athlete only has 4 hours per day or 8 hours. Let's just use per week because it's kind of easier to think of it like that. So an athlete in season has 20 hours per week, or off season 8 hours per week to spend on athletics. Now you have to think of it like this: those 20 hours or 8 hours aren't spent on strength and conditioning; they're spent on athletics as a whole. So what is their priority? Their priority is obviously their sport. So whether they're track, soccer, basketball, whatever it is, depending on the coach, like they're going to eat up all those hours. Right. So out of 8 hours per week, you might only get 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, it doesn't matter. So like if you as a strength and conditioning coach in a college out of season are only given, let's just say 3 hours per week with that team, that's a lot. Like you have to do a lot in a little bit of time. So the difference, here's from a training perspective, that's how this affects the training. That's why in like collegiate sports, like the guys are always squatting, benching, cleaning, deadlifting, snatching. Like that's like the big
get
5,
bang
right?
For your buck, right?
It's all about bang for your buck. That's essentially it. You have an hour. You need to do as much damage as you can within that hour, and then they're gone. Like it's just college is just a revolving door. Like athletes are just in and out all the time. Hour, in and out, gone. And now if the athlete is like, if this athlete is like really trying to get after it, they can volunteer more time, like outside of these hours, outside of this 8 hours per week or 20 hours per week. But it's just not that common. Like
that's crazy because if I'm I'm thinking about this, let's say I'm a basketball player, right, in college,
right?
I want shots, dude. I want to shoot. Right. And I want to do technique and like skill development stuff because in my mind as an athlete, that's what I'm going to feel when I'm on the court, right? Is I'm going to be one-on-one with someone, and either I've repped out more skill-based stuff and I'm more talented than they are or not.
Pretty much.
What's my incentive to really go put in, or as you said, volunteer, which sounds insane, especially as a college student, volunteer more time. Because Nate, this dude that I don't even really have a relationship with because he doesn't have enough time to build it, why should I go volunteer my time and trust him to do some like ankle mobilization drills and like end range conditioning so that I may or may not blow like get an injury halfway through the season? I actually never knew that. I always thought that strength and conditioning was a component, like an allotted, spaced out component of the entire program. But that makes total sense why athletes are always but messed up.
There's just limitations on it.
Huh. That's wild.
Yeah. So like, that's how it is. And like I said,
that's into private sector and then college. So then NFL or NBA stuff like pro level must be a little bit different.
Right. Yeah. So pros real different, especially NBA. NFL is like, I can't speak from experience, but like from what I know, like from a scheduling perspective, I'll just talk about the NBA. But anyway, so you're essentially at the mercy of the season, right? Like 82 games. You're either playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games a week. Like, and as a strength and conditioning coach, not only are you playing those games, let's say you're playing 5 games in a week, which is obviously a high week. It doesn't happen that often, but let's just like 4 or 5. all right, you're in LA, you have a game against I don't know, Portland. Then you have to fly out to Texas, right? Then you have to check into your hotel, play your game at 7 p.m. Play your game at 7 p.m., shower, eat, post game, and get back, check out of your hotel again, jump back on the plane, go to the next city. And then, so essentially what I'm trying to say is like in the NBA, it's just so hectic. Like everyone's always traveling. Nobody gets any sleep and ever. Like, it's just like,
Dude,
it's
not
so hard.
not to mention you're 10 feet tall and you're living in a world built for people that are 5 feet tall.
Right.
You're on a plane that you don't fit in the bed. You don't fit it. I mean, I'm joking, but like that is a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, think of how hard it is to sleep if you had to go and stay at like, I don't know, some Marriott that's like in a different city and it's not your bed and it's slightly uncomfortable. Now shorten that bed by 2 feet and then make your plane flight really uncomfortable. Oh, and by the way, you got to play a game every day. Like that's insane, dude.
And you have to go, well, depending on who your coach is, and you have to go to shoot around the morning of the game. Right. So like you have to play.
When do you see them? When do you ever see the athletes?
Exactly. So if you're on the road, it's like you just do it. Like essentially, it doesn't matter whether you're on the road or not. You do what you can. But let's just say when you're home, like, and it's a practice day, guys will show up. Guys will start showing up in the morning. They get their treatment done. They get their massages. Then they'll come to the weight room. Some guys come to the weight room before practice. So either guys will come before, like I said, guys will come to the weight room before practice, get your lift in, then they go practice. And then other guys who didn't lift before will come after. And then even then, guys that don't want to lift, they don't lift. Like they just don't. Like some guy, and like, again, this all depends on the coach. Like if you have a fantastic, and like all the coaches are great, but if the coach really has your back in terms of like, from a strength and conditioning perspective, from a training perspective, like Nate McMillan, who I worked under, was fantastic. He really pushed at the Pacers. Yeah, he really pushed for the guys to be in the weight room and lift, and he had our backs. He really endorsed them. So, and we also had great guys. So like it was never really an issue. Obviously, I had like 15 dudes. Maybe I had to like beg like 3 dudes to come lift with me.
Right.
And I'm like, dude, just give me 15 minutes. Like, come on, let's just hit this real quick, And then some guys would be like, no, I'm good, and the other guys would be, all right, fine, So, and they can do whatever they want. They're professionals, like like they're grown men. They live with their decisions, Like from a nutrition perspective, it's the same thing. You have a registered dietitian at your disposal, and you have a chef who cooks every day. Some guys will eat with the team and will eat what's provided, or some guys will go to McDonald's or Whole Foods or whatever they feel like doing because they just don't like the food that day or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like what I'm trying to say is like these guys are professionals and they do whatever they want. And it's fine as long as they perform, and that's what matters. Like,
so what do you see like when you're all right, your boots on the ground, right? You're in the strength and conditioning like training hall, or if you're on the road with these guys, what is the difference in mindset between like a bench warmer dude and like Paul George?
Right. So a star, like a guy that plays 35 minutes plus a night. I mean, those guys are usually like. Yeah, those guys are usually great. Like those guys want to be great. They want to work hard. They want to be there. They want to do all the right things. So they're never a problem. Like they're going to show up early and stay late. They're going to be in the weight room, like without question, So they're going to be great. Bench guys, like veterans, especially veterans, just because I feel like it's a cultural thing. Like, and I don't blame them because when I grew up like playing basketball at a young age, like I didn't touch weights because I was told not to. I was like, it's gonna mess up your jumper, it's gonna stunt your growth, whatever the myths were. And now we now know that they are myths and they don't exist and they're not real. Like some guys, they just don't know. So that's just the way it is. But some veterans would be like, no, I'm good. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years now. Like I'm fine, and then, like you said, the younger guys, like the bench warmers, the guys who need development, guys who are younger, like you're pretty much going to treat them like they're like collegiate athletes because they pretty much are collegiate athletes. So they're not going to get many minutes. So you're going to pound them hard, like in like from a training perspective, like you're going to do all the big things. You're going to squat, bench, dead, whatever, clean, like whatever it is. And not all guys are going to do I'm not saying everyone's going to back squat or everyone's going to, everyone's going to like power clean, whatever it is. Like you're just going to try to get all those adaptations, or you're going to try to develop these guys as much as you can so they can eventually be ready for the game. And like, if it just so happens that, they get called upon to get into the game and they're sore, well, too bad, because you're probably going to play 5 minutes anyway. So like, it's fine, So, yeah, that's kind of like the way it is.
So let me ask, like, let's say someone like yourself who's knowledgeable in like FRC, for example. So like your knowledge as a coach is super deep on an understanding of like the biomechanics, the postural like prerequisites to be able to do things, the necessary steps to then load the right ranges of mobility, whatever. If let's say you get onto a team, pro team, right? And you are now a strength and conditioning coach or assistant strength and conditioning coach on one of these teams. How do you like move the needle, the progressive needle, towards more progressive forms of training and more functional applications of training that we both know these sports need? Like football, basketball, tennis, these sports need better training. And I don't think that there's enough of a focus on it. And even to hear that, like, I mean, I'm thinking of like a basketball player in my head, and the need for a basketball player to bench press just seems asinine to me. Like if I'm ranking all the things that like they should be doing in their time, that would be very bottom of the list.
Right.
Unless I just don't understand the sport. But how would you take these concepts and these ideas in this structure of professional teams and actually integrate some of these ideas in there? How long will it take for these teams to change the way that they have? Like, I feel like they're all still working out in the 80s.
I don't know if that's true. I think it's come a long way, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think it depends on like what coaching staff you're talking to, which strength coaches you're talking to. But I mean, no, they're doing great stuff. Now, like, I can't speak for everyone because I don't know everyone, but like the guys who I'm thinking of, like Chris Chase, Eric Schmidt, Sean Wendell, Todd Wright, like, and there's some Ramsey Nigem, who's not in the NBA anymore, but he's fantastic. Anthony Dormiento, like, all these guys are like brilliant minds, and they're all doing the right things. Like, and what Daniel Bove and Corey Schlesinger are doing, like, they're creating the new standard of strength and conditioning in the NBA, and like that, and they're creating like a framework which is going to be like the new standard, and that like within the next 3 to 5 years, like, I don't know if you know these names and know these guys, but
no, but I'm really interested.
Oh, okay, yeah, those are guys. Those are all the guys who, and there's more. I look up to everyone, but those are just the first guys that came to my mind. But those are guys who are now creating like a framework for NBA strength and conditioning, which I think is going to like transcend, like kind of what you were saying, like transcend the way people may think guys are training now or have been training in the past. They're doing fantastic things, and obviously like that, and like once that framework is built, then it's going to evolve again. But like at least these guys are all doing great things, and we're all going to hear about it soon. The first, like, not the first, but I think one of the best pieces of literature that's come out, and it's come out very recently by Daniel Bove, is he just put out a book called The Quadrant System, which essentially explains, like, from a training load perspective, from an acute to chronic training load perspective, what a training week could, or training day could look like from a macro to micro view. So like, kind of like I was saying, like, you might be playing 5 games in a week, or you might be playing one game in a week. What like between, and like these two points and everything in between, like, what does your training look like? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Based off the workload, right? So high days are going to be high, low days are going to be low, right? So you can get this like nice undulating wave of high and low loads, and training and recovery, or development and recovery, whichever terms you want to use. They've pretty much, like, not that they figured it out, but they've figured out a comprehensive way to put it in a book and like share it with everyone, So it's not a book that I've read yet, just because it's not really relevant to the space I'm in right now. But if I ever get back into athletics, it's definitely one of the first books I'm picking up.
Do you think that this kind of stuff trickles down to like a high school level eventually?
What kind of stuff?
Just like, so what I'm hearing you say with the development that these guys are creating is like a true and needed structure within the professional level where like, all right, we're going to take guys out of 100 and how many games they play a season? 160?
82.
80. Okay. 82 nice. Super off. Super off.
It's okay.
So if you play 82 games a season, that volume's super high. We need to take into account travel schedules, high frequency games, low frequency games. And based on all of this information, we're going to funnel down into like the best training periodization for this team or for we'll call them like A-level players or B-level players, whatever, all based on like demands and outcomes. So if let's say this takes off and as I feel like it should, I mean, this makes a lot of sense to me as far as like managing the output of these athletes and maximizing their opportunity in the strength and conditioning realm. Do you think that something like that, as it finds success in the professional area, like the NBA or the NFL, does it start to make its way down to high school? And do we see high school programs really start to take advantage of the fact that they have these young athletes that are really capable of like building insane strength, preparing their ligaments and their joints for activity? Or do we still get stuck in like you either have a good high school strength and conditioning coach who's really passionate, or you got like your friend's dad who also coaches a basketball team kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's like, ideally, yes, but at the same time, it's just such a different animal. Like, you know, these high school kids, they're not playing 82 games. They're not traveling as much. They're not put under the same kind of demands and constraints. So I don't know. I mean, like maybe it's like, I don't know. I would say no, just because like kids, like as a young athlete, like you could run forever. Not saying that that's the right thing to do. But I'm not saying like, but like if I'm a 30-year-old veteran and I'm a 15-year-old or 16-year-old kid, like the energy levels and like how the way your body feels are like way different. And like I'm not saying it's wrong. It could be implemented. I just don't know. I think there's definitely things you can take away from it and learn, absolutely. But like to say like I'm going to implement this system in high school basketball, I just don't think I don't think it's necessary, just because like the sheer volume of games and traveling and the constraints that are involved in an NBA schedule, they're just not even close to the same. And even college too, like college, you don't play. I don't even know how many games are in a college season, but it's not even close.
Really? So you get into the NBA and I mean, the volume just goes through the roof. Like,
it's just
a completely different animal.
The volume, the speed of the game, the demands of the game, like everything's different. Totally.
How does again, like I'll admit I don't know a ton about basketball, right? And it's not a sport that I grew up playing. But from a positional standpoint, if you're a strength and conditioning coach, how do you navigate the build of different athletes in different positions? Because you're going to have some players that you want them to be very physical, right? And you want them to have extra muscle mass relative to someone else. You want guys that are going to be able to just like cruise in and get by people. You're going to want people that are very fast. You're going to want other guys where maybe they can forego a little bit of speed to have more power. Like, how do you, when you're in a team setting like that, how do you navigate these different demands of athletes based on position?
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many factors that play into this. I mean, like first you think of, like you said, position. Then I have to think about like, how does this athlete play? Like, what is their play style like? What are they good at? What are they bad at from just a basketball perspective? And then you take the same thing, but from a force velocity perspective. Like, or is this athlete force dominant, power dominant? Do they need some of the other? If they're power dominant and they're super elastic, do they need some of the other attributes? You know, and vice versa. And then, let's see. And then lastly, what do they need? I guess, like in general, like not just from a play perspective, but maybe from like what their role is going to be. You know, like, is this, like, for example, is this guy your muscle guy? Is he a big man? You know, is he going to be pounding down in the post much? now, like, the way basketball or with the NBA going where it is, like, not so much anymore. There are a few guys, you have your Joel Embiid and your Andre Drummond and your Dwight Howards and whatever it is. But like, we're heading towards like more and more, like we're heading towards positionless basketball, like every single player now is like shooting, dribbling, passing. Like, so like essentially everyone's doing the same stuff, except now everyone's just like 6 foot tall, 7 foot tall, 6'5", 6'8", like everyone's just different sizes now. So I would take like those factors, like what is their role, what do they need from a basketball perspective, what do they need from a training perspective, and like what is their position to begin with, and like you can really figure it out from there. If you have that much information to play with, you can really figure it out.
I remember I was tripping out on this one time, but I was at my dad's house one time, and he had just moved into a different house, and he didn't have all the channels, and so he got like one of the channels he got was ESPN Classic. And so I was just watching this football game, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like Alabama and like Oklahoma or something. It was a big like national game, and they were profiling the tight end, and they like brought him up on the screen, and the game was had to be like mid to late 80s. And they were like, blah, 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 star tight end. And he was 5'10", and he was 185 pounds. And I was like, dude, these guys now they're like the mountain in Game of Thrones or whatever. Like, they're so big. They're just, it's interesting to hear you say that we're getting towards like more of a positionless basketball, whereas with something like football, I feel like they're even getting more and more specialized based on the position and the demands. Granted, two entirely different games, but I think that to me says more about like the need and necessary knowledge of these strength and conditioning coaches, because you do have to tackle an ever-changing problem, right? Like you have to become a master of understanding the athlete that you're dealing with, the demands of the sport that they're playing, and then how to get the absolute most out of them, even if maybe they don't want to get it out of themselves, right? Like you're dealing with varied motivation levels too. Do you feel like you'll ever return back to the NBA? Is that something that you would like to do in the future?
Yeah, it's something I go back and forth on in my head, but like the answer is always going to be yes. I mean, like if an opportunity presents itself and it's an enticing one, meaning it's a full-time position and it's a multi-year like situation, then like I can't just scoff at that. So the answer is yes. I guess it just has, now something I've learned is, now that I know what it's like and I've been there and I've done that, now I know like I want to be able to come to work every day and enjoy the people and learn from the people that I work with on a daily basis. And also I want to live in the city that I can enjoy living in, so like obviously there's the ideal situation, but I mean, tomorrow if the Cleveland Cavaliers called, I would probably say no, but I mean, it depends on like what's involved.
So then, I mean, I take that it sounds like you're pretty content and happy actually doing what you're doing over with Monarch. Like, what is your guys? First off, I mean, tell everyone what your position is there. Monarch you guys are in Hollywood, right? In West Hollywood. You have one location, or you're opening up more?
We're opening up our second location. Projection is this coming spring, which will be in Brentwood. We're growing. We figured out a system that works, and we realize that there's a need for what we're doing and there's a demand for what we're doing. So we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing, and we're gonna keep trying to get better and like perfect the system that we've already created.
That's awesome. Yeah, I remember when you guys opened up, I thought it was a really cool and awesome offering within the space. I mean, for people to be able to go in and get that kind of intake, and that kind of feedback from multiple different professions within the industry, like you were mentioning earlier, is super valuable, because that then presents the client with the greatest opportunity to change, which at the end of the day, I think that's what we're all after, right? We're here to help clients change, and they're coming to us because that's what they're looking for. And I wish you guys the absolute best. It's awesome. Is there anything else you want to say? Like, where can people find you? How can they get a hold of you? Shameless plug, man.
Shameless plug. Yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out, I'm on Instagram. Like I'm easy to reach on Instagram, so you can find me at Nate Shemtov _coach. We can put that up somewhere, but yeah, that's pretty much all I got. I'm just trying to figure this out, all the time, like in terms of like how to perfect the system and at Monarch, and trying to help us grow. And we're gaining traction, and it's great to see that we're being recognized and people are understanding and learning who we are. So it's kind of cool to see that.
And then what's the website for like, how would that work? If someone wanted to come in and like, if they want to do a session with you, or if they wanted to go with someone else, like what is the process of them wanting to do that and then actually ending up doing that?
From like if someone signs up with a membership.
Yeah, like they could physically go to the location, right? Or is there
Right.
somewhere online where they can find you guys? Or like, how would
Oh yeah,
someone
totally.
become a
Right,
client
right.
base? How would someone become a client? That's a better way of saying
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have our website, which has a plethora of information, and I think you can apply for a membership there, and like schedule a tour there. But you can also just reach out on on social media and do the same. Just send a message and say that tell us that you're interested, and we can schedule you a tour to come check out the space, and we can tell you more about what we're all about and how we do things, and kind of just go from there.
Awesome. Well, dude, Nate,
Yeah.
it's a pleasure talking to you, man. A
Yeah,
wealth
man.
of information. It's really cool to hear too about, I mean, like I said, I don't know much about the NBA. I think that came through a little bit, but it was really cool to hear what it was like being a strength and conditioning coach and working through that. And I'm sure every single day you take the insights that you learn from there on the professional level, combine that with your knowledge. And I know that you help a lot of people out. So I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was great. This is really fun.
All right, later, brother.